going on, everybody? Happy Tuesday. Welcome to another edition of Mean Streets powered by FTN right here on the Game Plus Network. Also live on our FTN Network YouTube page. Chris Meaney here with you. Hopefully everybody had a fantastic holiday, continuing to have a fantastic holiday. We are back in action after a couple days off. Feeling refreshed, feeling good. The NHL is also back with, I think, 11 games on the schedule. The Blue Jackets and the Buffalo Sabres postponed, but a ton of action in the NHL. Dangle Betselli coming your way on Game Plus Network in just a little bit. Also can be caught on our FTN Network YouTube page. EY is living the dream. This guy's down south in Mexico. Sun is shining. He's drinking beers. Looks like he's having a great time. I'm jealous a little bit because the sun is not shining where I'm at. It is chilly. It is frigid. But we ran through all the games. We called some goals. We called some shot props and things like that. Going to do the same thing on this show. We have some shot props. We have some goals, and I'll walk through some of my favorite sides. I got things I like. Oh, mama. Things I like, point parlays, all that stuff. Going to visit the fantasy hockey waiver wire. Week 12 of the fantasy hockey season, so we're going to touch on that. Links inside of the description of this video. Still running some promos over at FTN Bets, FTNDaily.com as well. 3-day trials for free on both of those websites. All you have to do is sign up. It's simple. Sign up, mess around on the website, see what we have to offer, see if you like it. Some people reaching out to me regarding NHL betting packages. And I suggest just doing this first. FTNbets.com/free. Sign up. You get picks across all the sports. And we're giving picks across all the sports. NFL picks, obviously. College, big week in college football, bowl weeks leading up to the national championship games. And then we have, of course, baseball is around the corner, but golf also, sooner than baseball as we, pretty much turn the calendar here on 2022, get into 2023 and things like that. And of course, all the picks across all sports happening over at ftnbets.com. And you get a look at our projections and our tools Discord channel in there as well. And over on the daily side, if you're just some DFS, you're looking to get involved, you want to play some fantasy football down the stretch, hopefully everybody had a fantastic semifinal and you're into the championship. But if you're not and you wanted to play, some fantasy football here in week 17 and next week and then into the playoffs, we'll be with you through the entire NFL playoff schedule. And then you have access to the projections and the tools, just like you do over at ftnbets.com, and then optimizer for the NBA, and then optimizer for the NFL. And of course, we do have a PGA optimizer there as well. Lots of things happening over at FTN Daily, ftnbets.com, and the hockey article over at ftnfantasy.com. Today on the show, we are going to take a look at the playoff picture in the AFC and the NFC. We're going to take a look at the Week 17 NFL betting schedule. There are a lot of solid, interesting games. There's a couple of course, dead games, teams that don't have anything to play for playing each other, but there are some games where teams have a lot on the line. You got Miami and New England playing each other this week. You got the Bills and the Bengals. That should be a great game. Buffalo and Kansas City playing for that top spot. I do believe the Chiefs hold a tiebreaker, so the Bills are going to want to go perfect here down the stretch. If they get one loss and Kansas City wins out, then they will take that top spot, and it's just significant. It really is. I mean, you don't need me to tell you how significant it is. I don't think we've seen Patrick Mahomes play any road playoff games. And then just to go into Arrowhead or go into Buffalo, what is it, New Era? Like, those are two very tough places to play football. And I think if the Bills have home field advantage, it's going to be, I would give them the benefit of the doubt to come out of the AFC. I don't think there's really much of a question, but things are a little bit more clearer now. We still have two spots up for grabs in the NFC with losses over the weekend. Giants lost a tough one to Minnesota. Another just last second win by the Vikings. They just continue to, I think they're 12-1 in like one score last second games or something silly like that. I mean, you could reverse it. I'm sure you guys see it as well. And I don't buy too much into those graphics that say if the one possession games were flipped the other way, the Vikings they'd have one win or two wins. It's like it all happened. It doesn't always work out that way for you, that you're on the right side of it as much as the Vikings are, but they have been on the right side of it a lot this year. And the Giants have been as well, but it was a highly entertaining game, really, I thought. And then it was a walk-off game-winning field goal from, I think, Joseph, which was, I think, in the 60s, like flirted with 60 yards, I do believe. Anyways, 2 playoff spots up for grab in the NFC with Washington losing and the Giants losing. And all of a sudden, the Green Bay Packers, they're going to wrap up with 2 games at home, and they have a chance to make the playoffs after the win on Christmas over Miami. And then in the AFC, the win last night by the Chargers punched a ticket into the playoffs, and just 1 spot up for grabs in the AFC, and Tua Tagovailoa in concussion protocol. So not great news for him and the Dolphins, who wrap up with a tough final 2 games. We'll dive into all of that stuff. You guys have any fantasy football questions, by all means, leave them. We'll dive into it a little bit deeper in the week. It's still a little early for a start and sit, but we can have that conversation. It's not a lot of that you're going to be able to get on the waiver wire, but it's just you and your opponent. So you're really going to want to play some matchups and things like that. Defenses, quarterbacks, we can all get into. Told you guys Gardner Minshew would have a nice fantasy day. 24 fantasy points. He tossed 2 touchdowns. He was plus 150 for 2 touchdowns. I thought he played pretty good against the Cowboys. He did make some mistakes, of course. I mean, it's a guy who hadn't had an NFL start in quite some time, and just 3 in the past 2 years or so. I thought he played pretty good. The Eagles turned the ball over 4 times, so you're not going to win when you turn the ball over 4 times. Neither secondary had a great day. In fact, Dak was perfect in zone. I think it was 24 for 24 when the Eagles played. Man, they did create a couple turnovers, had a couple sacks, had a sack fumble, and I think Dak was 3 for 9. But he did carve up the Eagles secondary. That was a highly entertaining game. There still is a glimmer of hope for the Cowboys to win the NFC East. They would need the Eagles to lose out, and the Cowboys would have to win out. And they do have some winnable games. They are playing this Thursday against the Titans, who are all of a sudden on the outside looking in. That's right. The Jacksonville Jaguars are in the top spot in the AFC South. Who would have thought it? I'm here for it. I absolutely love it. And they have a winnable game this week against the Texans before wrapping up in week 18 against the Tennessee Titans. So all of that and more on this show. Some picks in the NHL. See some people hanging out. It looks like some success for the Mean Streets family. I myself fortunate to get into a few finals as well, and I'm pretty happy about that. But we're not here for my team. We're here for your team. We're here to help you guys out. So if you have any questions, leave them there. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back here on Mean Streets. A lot to get to here on Game Plus Network. Keep it locked.
At DraftKings Sportsbook, you can bet on nearly any sport imaginable. The NFL, the NBA, college football, college basketball, golf, the NHL, tennis, Major League Baseball, MMA, and more. Download the DK Sportsbook app on iOS and Android operating systems, as well as on your desktops or in mobile browsers. Get the best bonuses using promo code FTN. Remember, the only way to gamble responsibly is to win. PrizePicks is a creative new way to parlay picks based on expected fantasy point production and single stat projections. You pick 2 to 5 players and predict if they'll go over or under their projected fantasy point total or their single stat total. When parlaying the players, the larger your parlay, the better the payout. A 2-pick entry pays 3x. A 3-pick entry pays 5x. A 4-pick entry pays 10x. As a bonus offer, there's a flex play option. This provides an added level of security on your entry where you can decrease your multiplier received if you miss one of your entries but hit on all the others. At FTN, we have PrizePicks coverage for every sport in both article and standalone pick format on our PrizePicks pick tracker. Use promo code FTN for a 100% deposit match on your first deposit of up to $100.
Welcome back in. Mean Streets here live on Game Plus Network. Want to just address some of the comments from the good people here in the Mean Streets on Game Plus Network. What do we got? Brett in the house. Greetings all. Welcome in. Lost by 0.75 points. Oh, that makes me sick. I don't want to see it. You lost in one league yesterday because you started Deion Jackson, but I did make it through 2 leagues. So hooray. Man, 0.75 points. He started to get a little bit of run at the end. He caught a couple passes. He had that one catch for -9 yards to start, and then we didn't see him. I mean, he was actually benched. Like I think him. I mean, really, I think Jeff Saturday benched. I don't know. I know he had a late fumble towards the end. But yeah, tough loss for you, but at least you made it in 2 of 3. That's great. I didn't make it in Jake's flex leagues, and I really wanted to. My team was just in shambles down the stretch of the year. I mean, you lose Kyler, and then when you lose Kyler, you also lose Marquise Brown. Really, it's kind of hand in hand, right? I mean, the third string quarterback and McSorley. I mean, they hung around with the Bucks. I think it's more about the Bucks than it is about McSorley, Penn State boy. But it's tough. I started to lose some pieces on. I really wanted Jake's flex league. Shout out to Michael Beller, my old colleague there from the Athletic, who took me down. But at least you made 2 there. Foles was pretty bad. Brett says can't believe they didn't pull him for Ellinger, but I guess they were tanking without tanking in quotations. I mean, yeah, it didn't matter, honestly. I mean, they were going to lose a football game with Ellinger. They're going to lose a football game with Matt Ryan. I think Ryan gave them the best chance to win the football game. Actually felt bad for Foles. It's just they put him in there to get crushed. I mean, the offensive line didn't hold him up. What are we going to ask for from Nick Foles in that spot? I think as an organization, they probably had already seen enough from Sam Ellinger, but I would have put him in that game just to give him one more taste. Maybe they felt bad for the kid. They didn't want to throw him in. They throw the veteran Nick Foles in there come Christmas time, St. Nick, but there is no magic from his game. He didn't play all that good at all. I thought maybe a couple more dump offs and things like that, but yeah, rough game. I don't think it really mattered, but I would have, again, if I'm the Colts organization, I'm putting in Ellinger just to see one more to look. But I'm assuming they saw enough in that game. So I'm still not impressed with the Chargers offense. I'm not really. They don't have any run game. They're too one-dimensional. Herbert's just looked okay lately. That's it. Austin Eckler's phenomenal. I think he's got 34 touchdowns from scrimmage, like all like rushing, receiving, since the start of last season. And I believe there's a gap of 10 touchdowns between him and the second closest guy. And I think it's like Taylor and Mixon are kind of in there. But Austin Eckler's been phenomenal. Do you remember, Tyler, on this show when we had all those Austin Eckler questions after week 2 or week 3? What do I do with Austin Eckler? What do I do with Austin Eckler? And my goodness, we talked about buying low. And if you bought low or you stuck it out with Austin Eckler, it's hard to imagine you not, having success in fantasy this year because he has been that good. He has carried me in some spots. He's been a walking touchdown machine. Austin Eckler. Like, I just want to give him some love, man. Like Austin Eckler, like he deserves some love because I like the way that he plays. He's a small running back. He's not a guy that, is going to get 15 to 20 carries between the tackles, although he can, I think he can handle it. He wants to, the Chargers want to keep him fresh and, for the most part, he wants to keep fresh too. He embraces fantasy. Him and Liz Loza's they had the podcast over at Yahoo. Liz is fantastic. I did some stuff with her before in the past over at Anthem Sports Entertainment, and just a super sharp girl, and also just very fun and friendly and giving. And the two together were a really nice duo. And Austin Eckler, as I mentioned, he embraces fantasy, but some of these games with touchdowns, I mean, unbelievable. This guy, he's got there's been one, let's see, how many games has he not had a touchdown? The first 3 games were very quiet, and that's when people were like, oh my goodness, what do I do? Like 14 for 36, 14 for 39, 4 for 5. He still had some catches, right? And people were complaining about the rushing and no touchdowns, but he had 9 catches, 8 catches. This guy had 21 catches in his first 3 games. So even when you don't get the yardage of the touchdowns, he's making it up through the air. So there was only 2 games after the first 3 games of the season where he didn't have a touchdown. Against the Texans, he had 3. Then he had 2 with Cleveland, 1 against the Broncos, 2 against Seattle, 2 against Atlanta. Nothing against San Fran. Was a quiet game from him. He still had 7 catches. Then KC, he had a rushing touchdown. Against Arizona, he had a receiving touchdown. Against the Raiders, he did nothing. Very unusual quiet game. In fact, 2 quiet games against the Raiders this season. But again, he still racked up 9 catches in those 2 games against the Raiders. And then he finishes up here in the last 3 weeks with 4 rushing touchdowns. And he caught 14 passes over that span as well. So Phenomenal season from Austin Eckler. Where does he go in drafts next year? I think we realized that Justin Jefferson's in the 101. And now we can kind of officially turn the page on fantasy. We get into playoffs, and we're always going to talk playoffs and in a fantasy spin for the DFS people and, one and done pools for this week and next week. I'm in a couple. I know that there's a lot of different things we can talk about when it comes to football and fantasy and betting and playoff pools and things like that. But we will also revisit the year where we went wrong. We're going to hold ourselves accountable in the show, where we went wrong, where we went right, um, risers and fallers from a redraft standpoint, from a dynasty standpoint. We're going to take a look at all of that stuff in the next few days. And again, as we turn the calendar on the new year, but we will do a way too early rankings. But I would have, like, for me, Justin Jefferson's 101. He's 101. And I'm thinking like Adams and Chase. Like, there's a lot that could happen with the Raiders. They're going to have a top pick. Do they move on from Carr? Do they move on from Josh McDaniels? How is Adams going to feel? I mean, the big reason he wanted to go to Las Vegas was Derek Carr, right? And I'd imagine he's going to have a say in some of the moves that happen in the organization. I think they should draft a quarterback. Doesn't need to play right away. He can play behind Carr for a year or two. You got to get a quarterback. It's not all on Derek Carr in Las Vegas. The defense has been atrocious. But another just heartbreaking loss for the Raiders. They're actually in the playoff picture. I didn't include them on the board. We'll get to it in a second, Tyler. They need a lot to happen. I think they need everyone to tie, and then they would win some sort of tiebreaker. But think about the collapses that the Raiders have had this year against the Jags, against Arizona in the second half of games. They lost Jeff Saturday and the Colts in their own barn. That was the first game. They were 5.5-point favorites. They lost another heartbreaker at the end of the game against the Steelers on Christmas. They've lost a lot of just dud games. The one against the Rams and Baker, my goodness, right? I don't know. Like, I don't think Josh McDaniels is a great head coach. I think he's a really good play caller. Clearly, he is a great play caller in the NFL, and he has been for years. But I just don't feel like he's a good head coach. I just don't think he's a good leader. Nathaniel Hackett's gone. I don't know what took him so long. I don't think they'll let McDaniels play with the year, but I wouldn't be shocked if he was one and done as well. I didn't really like what I saw from him when he was a head coach for the Broncos. I thought he learned a thing or two. I didn't like when he left the Pats for the Colts, and then he got cold feet and he left, just like put them in a very bad spot. And then I just get bad vibes when it comes to Josh McDaniels. But anyways, Austin Eckler, I would say he is probably, people will rank Taylor and they'll rank Saquon ahead of guys like Austin Eckler. And I get that because they're more suited for like 15 to 20 touches. Like, they'll have more touches, but Eckler is still unbelievable. I still think he has another elite season in him, catching balls out of the backfield with Herbert, with the offense, and makes up for it through the air. And he's just a player in the red zone. He gets so many touches inside the red zone, through the air, on the ground, leads the NFL or close to it in opportunities inside the red zone. I'm pretty sure he does lead. I don't have the numbers after yesterday, but Austin Eckler, I wanted to give him some love because he's been absolutely fantastic. What else do we have here from some peeps in the house? Mehdi went 1 for 3 in the semifinals this year, but made it through to the finals in Dynasty, arguably the one he wanted to take down the most. So that's fantastic. We love that. Good for you. Good luck this week. Hopefully you can get it done. Lee Ving, go Sharks. Going to give some love to the San Jose Sharks a little bit later on. I like them today as dogs against the Canucks. I like Hurdle back in the lineup. He's plus money for 3 shots. He's plus 245 for a goal. I like him tonight. Lee Ving also says that, Brett, how many times did Foles pass up the check down to throw a deep shot pick? A couple times. We did see that a couple times. Passed on the check down for the pick. Hey, at least he took some shots, right? We see quarterbacks all the time. They only throw the check off. But yeah, rough go for St. Nick last night in the Colts. Tyler, need to grab a defense special teams off the waivers. So we have the Jags, the Dolphins, the Eagles, the Bucks, and the Jets. Yeah, the Jags are going to be the hot pickup this week. I'm going to try to block my opponent in a couple spots. I have the Eagles defense. I rolled them out against the Cowboys. I'm going to continue to roll them out. I have a lot of Eagles, a lot of 49ers. Those are two defenses that I would stick with against the Saints. I like Philly to kind of bounce back, get some pressure. I think that they are the defense that I trust the most. What do you got? The Dolphins here against the Jets. You have the Bucks. The Bucks play the Panthers and the Jets play the Dolphins, right? So the Jets are definitely in play. We'll keep an eye on what happens with, I don't know, the Dolphins play New England. Do you have the schedule? There you go. All over it. So I've kind of highlighted the games that are meaningful. Of course, Dallas up at the top with the division grabs in Tennessee. Both of those teams wins, but man, let's be honest about where the Titans are right now, and the Cowboys going in as 10-point favorites, and Dak and company rolling on offense since he's returned. But you got the Jets in there. The Jets have a meaningful game against the Seahawks. That's right. Okay. And then we have the Bucks against the Panthers, the Jags against the Texans, and then the Dolphins against the Patriots, right? I would probably rank these. I still like Philly. They've been a good team. They've getting pressure. They're getting pressure off the quarterback. They're at home. It's a meaningful game. They can get some sacks, maybe create some turnovers. They're touchdown favorites here, and we're still uncertain if Jalen Hurts is going to start. So I would say Philly, Jacksonville. I like what Jacksonville's done defensively. They're getting pressure, they're creating some turnovers. The Texans are brutal. They're awful. Um, so I would rank them 2. Then I would go Jets against Seattle. Then I would probably go Bucks. Man, I'm not crazy about this Bucks defense, but Sam Darnold, Carolina. I mean, it's a meaningful game. Tampa was lucky to get that win the other day against Arizona. It was looking like Carolina was going to control their own destiny. If Tampa had lost that game, they would have needed to win out. And of course, it's a matchup this week against the Bucks. So I would rank them Philly, Jacksonville, Jets, Bucks. I'm not sure. Yeah, Dolphins. I don't know, man. I'm not really into the Dolphins. I know against the Pats, but I'm not totally into that. I would go Eagles and then Jags, but I am going to try to block my opponent. Maybe he may be watching, you may be listening. I'm not sure. And if you are Turk, I'm going to try to block you, dude, because you rolled out the Niners, you rolled out the Broncos defense last week, got you negative points. I didn't see that coming. There's no way you're rolling out Denver defense against Kansas City. There's a couple options that are out there. Jacksonville is one. And then can you bring up the schedule? There's another defense that I think in a pretty good spot that could be available. Dallas is not going to be available. I wouldn't roll out the Lions. I mean, if you rolled out the Lions last week, they got you negative points. It didn't really do anything for you. Kansas City, I would roll out Kansas City. You could. The Broncos are just depleted. I know that maybe there's a little fire potentially with the coaching change, but I'd say not likely. These guys are fighting with each other on the sidelines. Russ is throwing picks left, right, and center. So KC is an option that could be available for you. Patriots, most likely owned, but if they weren't, especially if there's no Tua in that game, I'd say the Giants could potentially be in play as well, if it is Nick Foles. But I like the Eagles. I think they're strong. I think that maybe the Brownies could be in play with Heineke, but I'd say that's pretty risky. I think the Jags are a really good defense. The Niners, of course, are owned, and they're going to be a top 3 defense for me this week. The Jets, as we talked about, in a decent spot. Chargers against the Rams. I don't know if I really go there. They are starting to get a little bit healthier defensively. The Ravens could be available. The Steelers. So I forget who that defense was. That I think it maybe was the Jets that I was thinking about a decent option there, but I think the Jags are a pretty strong pickup. What else do we have here from some peeps in the house? This game and the Broncos game, NFL needs to upgrade the product. Yeah, Giants versus Colts D. I think as I walked through that, I would rather go with Philly and Jacksonville, and I think the Jets, but the Giants D against the Colts and Nick Foles. Yeah, I think it's a decent streaming option. I still don't really feel like they have a lot of playmakers in the Giants secondary, but they got a couple guys who can get some pressure on the quarterback. The line didn't look good last night for the Colts, and if it is Nick Foles again, yikes. If Hurts plays, do you trust him enough to start him? Absolutely. If Hurts plays, the Eagles trust him enough to finish the game and play the game. So absolutely. I don't want to overthink this with Jalen Hurts. I tell you what, it's easy to overthink things. I made it by in one of my semis. Luckily, my opponent had some dud games. Herbert was one of them last night. And I was battling with myself all week long whether I was going to play Gardner Minshew or Justin Fields. And I was just thinking to myself, how can I sit Justin Fields after everything that he has done over the past few weeks and the rushing upside? But then I looked at the field and I looked at the Bills and I was like, oh my goodness. I went with Fields. I just didn't want to be a homer, but I thought that Minshew could do enough, and he did do enough. And he ended up scoring 24 fantasy points and Fields had 9. But this seems different. This is like Hurts, who was the favorite for MVP before the injury happened. He's played 2 games in his career against the Saints. I think his first full NFL start 2 years ago came against the Saints. He had over 100 yards on the ground. Miles Sanders had over 100 yards on the ground. Last year, they played the Saints as well. I think the same thing happened. Both guys had 100 yards on the ground. He has had really good games against the Saints. My thinking is if he plays, he's healthy enough to play, and you trust this guy. I don't know what your options are, Brett, but Hurts has been not only arguably the NFL MVP, but the fantasy MVP, the safest floor in fantasy among quarterbacks this season. He's been absolutely amazing. Amazing. So I would play him. And I would risk Watson. Same sort of, I think he is definitely riskier actually because he's had a numerous amount of injuries. Does that make sense? He's had plenty of injuries. That's makes a little bit more sense. Plenty of injuries this year, tons of injuries. Before the season started, a couple times where he's left games. Last week he left a game. I looked like he was on his way. Did anybody else get burned by the Christian Watson receiving yard prop of 51 or 52 and a half? And he was stuck on 49 at halftime. Anybody else? No, just me. Okay. All right. That one stung a little bit, but I'd say if he plays, I'd roll the dice because it's the Vikings and we know about their secondary. Rodgers is kind of cooking right at the right time of the season. I don't know what your other options are, Brett, but I would play him. Let's keep an eye to see if he does suit up this week. Leaving 2 playoff games starting Najee, right? That's just I won 2 playoff games starting Cam Akers. It's crazy, right? How it's fantasy. Honestly, it's a crapshoot. That's why I think you should award your league winners, your regular season league winners. The guy that was perfect, basically perfect all year in my home league, 12-1. He had the most points. He was phenomenal. And the bye last week, he had a dud showing. And then this week, he had a dud showing as well. At least, he has something to show for a really strong season. And that I think is that's harder to do, obviously, to have that season come first for the regular season. And then in the playoffs, it's just all about matchups and weird things happen, right? Last year, Justin Jackson and Rex Burkhead come to mind. This year, Cam Akers, 3 touchdowns. And I know I hear the noise. I hear it. Oh, great. Cam Akers won you a consolation bracket. Oh, great. AJ Dillon won you a consolation bracket. It's not necessarily true. Like it's possible. It's just one guy. It doesn't seem like a great pick, but these guys down the stretch are turning out to be fantasy football championship winners for you or MVPs for you during the most important time. AJ Dillon, did it ever seem like we were going to get the over 5.5 rushing touchdowns for AJ Dillon? No, it didn't. He's got 5 in his last 4 games, and he had another touchdown over the weekend. Cam Akers, his last 3 games been great. I see some people, chirping on Twitter and saying, oh, show me your team, screenshot me your team. I don't believe that you had Cam Akers. Guys, fantasy, we all know it's tough, man. People drop guys, you pick them up, you're in tough spots, you have to start guys. Cam Akers had a great game over the weekend. He's actually had 3 or 4 decent games in a row. He's been pretty solid for people. So, I'd love to hear those type of players that helped you get over the edge, players you didn't think. Jahan Dotson's a guy that I've started over the past couple weeks. Didn't think I'd get anything from him, but from a Chris Olave and a Cortland Sutton owner, playing him against San Fran, I didn't love it, but he scores a touchdown. It's a great day, and he had a great day against the Giants. And I think he's interesting this week as well, as we will have our rankings for those that are playing in the finals. We'll have them live here on our website, FTN Fantasy today, and we'll give you again a sneak peek of our rankings and projections to help you get that championship game. Great question, Lee. CMC Eckler 2023. A great question. I lean CMC. He's done it. He's shown me a lot here over the past couple weeks. He really is in a phenomenal situation in San Fran. We'll see what the future holds for CMC, but he's a Niner and he's playing for the Niners next year. I will lean him, but it's probably him and Eckler for me personally as my 2 guys. I'm still going to be in on Taylor. I'm still going to be in on Saquon. I think Dalvin Cook and Mixon, but there's a lot of running backs that could potentially be free agents and could be in different spots. Josh Jacobs comes to mind. Miles Sanders comes to mind. David Montgomery, couple backups in Madison and Tony Pollard, who's not a backup. There's things are going to be wild in the NFL in the offseason. They really will. They've been crazy over the past couple of years, but I would lean CMC over Eckler for 2023. Do you guys agree? Love to hear your guys' takes as well. We're going to take a quick break. We're going to dive into the playoff pictures in the AFC and the NFC, and also dive back into that schedule as well for week 17. Keep her locked. Lots more to get to here on Mean Streets. There's an out in CMC's contract after this year. I just wanted to double check, but they could decide to hang on San Fran, and I think he's up till like 2025. So it seems like a match made in heaven, does it not? It really does. I mean, the way that Kyle Shanahan runs his offense and the play calling that he has on his resume and how good of a play caller he is, mixed in with how great CMC is. He didn't have a great game against Washington, but credit to Washington and their rush defense, right? They got some guys that can stop the run, but man, another great game from George Kittle. Can you believe his catch prop was 3.5? I think at plus money and 39.5. He just had another monster game. George Kittle has been an MVP down the stretch of the season here. He's a guy that's been really, really good with Purdy, with Debo and not being 100% and things like that. So we're seeing massive, massive games from Kittle. Let's take a look at the NFC playoff picture first. Let's start there. Just give you guys a look. Of course, you can see this anywhere you want, but I wanted to share with you guys. You got the first round bye there from Philly, so Dallas still has an opportunity here. They wrap up with Tennessee this week as their 10-point favorites, and then they have a game against Washington. Philly's got the Saints this week and a game against the Giants. If they can take care of their business this week at home at the Link, then they will clinch the number one spot, and we will see Tampa and Dallas. I assume Tampa will clinch a playoff spot, the division, with a win this week against Carolina. I like them. They're 3-point favorites. I know they haven't played pretty football, and there's been a lot of issues with Tampa, but I do like them to win by a field goal at home this week against Carolina. And then you see San Fran. San Fran could catch Meaney. They really could. Meaney and Green Bay playing this week, right? If San Fran, the way that they're playing football, they have a game this week against the Raiders. I expect them to win that game, take care of business. They could get that number 2 spot. It's very, very possible. The Giants clinch a playoff berth with a win this week, a Washington loss plus a Seattle loss, or a Washington loss plus a Detroit loss and a Green Bay loss, or a Detroit loss plus a Seattle loss and a Green Bay loss. Basically, if they win against the Colts this week, they're in. And that game really won't mean a whole lot for either team potentially when it comes to week 18 between the Eagles and the Giants. But a win, take care of your business. You win and you are in. And I would expect them to beat the Colts this week. Tyler, your Giants, man. Hodgson and Richie James, these guys. I almost played Hodgins in one league and I couldn't do it. I wish I did. He's been a touchdown machine too, kind of over the past couple weeks. Him and Richie James, like, what is happening with the Giants? I mean, this is who Daniel Jones is throwing the football to. Hodgins and Richie James and Darius Slayton hit his receiving yard prop. We had that on the show. You're seeing what Bellinger is back in the lineup too. Hey, the Giants, man, they're getting it done. I think Coach of the Year, it's got to be Daboll. It's got to be Daboll. I think you could give like front office, like they have that, right? Front office of the year, right? It's like executive of the year. It's got to go to Howie Roseman, right? With all the offseason moves the Eagles did. And then you give the coach of the year to Brian Daboll instead of Nick Sirianni, but we'll see. So you could chuck that one back up there for me if you don't mind. And we'll kind of roll through the other scenario for Washington. So Washington win. They clinch a playoff spot if they win. And Detroit loses, Seattle loses, and Green Bay. So they're still like, they have that tie, which is nice, but those are going to be tough games potentially. Even Cleveland, right? That's not going to be easy for them. Taylor Heineke's not playing great football lately. I don't think they go to Carson Wentz. I think they just kind of ride this out with Taylor Heineke. I think it may be a mistake to go to Wentz. I was thinking maybe we would see Wentz in that game against the Niners. It wouldn't have made a difference, but I thought if there was a moment where Ron Rivera would make the quarterback switch, it was like there was a part of that game where they put him in and then prepare for the final 2 weeks. But that game against Dallas could be meaningless at the end, so they could squeak in. Tough spot really for Seattle, despite their 2 games at home. The Jets, that's a meaningful game for both teams. I say the loser is done. Seattle and New York, and then wrap up against the division rivals and the Rams. And then for Detroit, Chicago at Green Bay, that's tough. And then look at Green Bay, right? Sitting here with a chance, both games at home, divisional games, Meaney in Detroit. If they could win out, they can get to 9. And then, they would need some help for Washington to lose those games. And then, of course, if they win out, Detroit would be eliminated. And then Seattle, if they lost to the Jets here, it would help them. So all of a sudden, man, Green Bay has an opportunity here to get into the playoffs. I haven't taken the Packers seriously over the past couple of years. I honestly haven't. I've been really hard on the Packers. They cruise through the regular season, they get their home field advantage, and then they lose, right? They lose to the Niners over the past couple of years. The Niners have had their number. I would still give the benefit of the doubt to the Niners. If the Green Bay Packers squeaked in as the 7th seed and they played San Fran as the 2nd seed, I'd be picking San Fran. But if they found a way to get in and play the Vikings, I mean, I don't know if none of us really believe in the Vikings. I would give the benefit of the doubt for Minnesota to beat Washington and the Giants, even though it took a last-second field goal to beat the Giants this past weekend. But I still like their offense enough that Wentz did play against the Niners. He must have touched the field a little bit later on in the game. I was looking for him to touch the field in the third quarter. Must have missed that. Thank you, Lee, for that. So he did. Maybe then there is a chance that he does suit up this week. We'll see how that plays out. I didn't think that he touched the field. Anyways, Green Bay, they're not a team that I've really believed in over the past couple of years, but a different vibe if they squeak into the playoffs on a winning streak and Rodgers, has his weapons. Everybody seems kind of healthy there. For the most part, Watson, if he does play, and then Dobbs, and then Cobb's giving him something. I know that Aaron Jones is not healthy, but they would be a dangerous team. When you add Brady and you add Rodgers into, the element that you include the Eagles and you include the Cowboys, you include the offense that, the Vikings have, and then these like special teams, I would say, like the Giants are one of those special teams that are finding ways to win football games. They're playing a little loose. They'd have no pressure on them. But when you add Brady and Rodgers into the mix, it does become pretty interesting. He threw a touchdown pass, Lee. I must have been sipping the booze, man. I must have been sipping the bats. I missed that one on Christmas Eve. I missed that one. I got to look it up right now. I'm curious. We'll take a quick break after that. Because I feel like there could be a quarterback switch. 12 for 16, 123 and a touch. He threw the ball way more than I thought he did. I was locked into the Eagles. I think there were 2 games at that point, Eagles and boys, and then the Niners and Washington. And I must have just been too zoned in on the Birds. I was on the edge of my seat watching that game. All right. Appreciate you, Lee, for that one. Playoff seedings, BS, road game for possible 13-4 Cowboys and a sub 500 team. And I hate the Cowboys. You kind of see this every year. You really do. Or every other year. We've seen it before. And we've seen those home teams win, right? I think of Marshawn Lynch in Seattle. Remember Seattle when they hosted a playoff game? I think they had 7 wins on the season. They hosted a game against the Saints, and Marshawn had that heck of a run, and they won. It is BS, but it's just the way it is, man. Like sometimes this happens. I don't know what you do. Like you win your division, you should host a playoff game. You should. And there'll be dogs at home. The Cowboys will be favored. It's kind of the way it is. We've seen it before in the NFC East. I've seen it before in the NHL too, the way that the NHL used to have their playoff seedings. But we want to break. We got a break, and we'll dive into the AFC next. So keep your luck. We'll be back here in a couple. leaving. I got to go back now and watch Carson Wentz. I got to go watch those 16 pass attempts. I got to see how my old boy did. I need to. I'm not going to watch that. I'm not going to do it. I may watch the condense. I feel like they're going to make some sort of switch. I don't know. That'd be pretty bold of Ron Rivera to do it, but Heineke just doesn't seem to have it. I know Wentz doesn't either, but I think they need some sort of switch to get them back going. Maybe they can get into the playoffs, but I don't think they're going to get in. I think they're going to be done. AFC, one spot up for grabs in the AFC playoff picture. Miami's holding it down as of right now, but they are in trouble. They are in trouble. Tua hasn't looked himself over the past couple of games. Now he's in concussion protocol. Man, it looked honestly like he suffered that concussion in the second quarter, and the guy continued to play. It's been a hot topic in the NFL this season. They do right now have that number 7 seed, and will be a matchup against Kansas City. And how fun would that be? And Tyreek Hill back there as well. But the Bills do hold their own fate, but the schedule is not easy for them. Cincinnati this week, and then they wrap up against New England. So Kansas City has 2 very winnable games. They have the Broncos this week and then the Raiders. So they would get that number 1 spot if the Bills lose one game. So a lot on the line for both of those teams over the final couple of weeks. You see Miami at New England, and then against the Jets, really tough there. Miami and Buffalo for New England, also very tough. Jets have 2 games on the road. Those aren't going to be easy games either. There's a lot on the line for all 3 of those teams, the Seattle Seahawks and Miami Dolphins, along with the Jets. Tennessee, right? Tough. Dallas this week. Jacksonville has got the matchup against the Texans, and then they're going to wrap up against Tennessee. The Jags are going to make the playoffs, guys. The Jags are going to make the playoffs, and I'm here for it. Good stuff, man. Doug Peterson in year 1 with Jacksonville. Everybody's buying in. Trevor Lawrence looks like the guy that was selected number 1 overall. Urban Meyer out of town. Again, coaching, right? One-on-one. Look at Purdy. Purdy looks like a superstar, man. He looks better than Jimmy G. And that's like Kyle Shanahan, right? It's coaching. Nick Sirianni, it's with the Eagles. It's all coaching, the play calling. It's great stuff. I love it. I love to see a quarterback and an offense have success, when a new coaching, regime there in Jacksonville is paying off. Pittsburgh still alive at Baltimore and then Cleveland. Baltimore's clinched. Do you force Lamar back? Do you want to play a road game in Buffalo and Kansas City? No, you don't. You want to be able to try to get down that division. If the Bills beat Cincy and then the Ravens win this week, they're back there, with the chance to win the division and hosting a game. But ultimately, you want to have a healthy Lamar. You don't want to force this guy back, to play the Steelers. I think that they could beat the Steelers without Lamar. It'll be a grind, low-scoring field goal type game, just like all the time when these 2 teams play each other. But I think you want to have a healthy Lamar. So the only team here that hasn't clinched is Miami. So there's a couple different scenarios. Let's see. I think I got them here. So Buffalo clinches home field advantage AFC, lone first round bye with a win or a Kansas City loss. You got Cincy clinching the AFC North division title with a win and a Baltimore loss. And you have Miami clinching a playoff berth with a win plus a Jets loss. So they will need a little bit of help, but it all starts this week. Interesting stuff there. Love to hear who you guys think will get in or out. Tyler says pre-concussion Tua had 230 yards and 1 touchdown in the first half. Post-concussion Tua had 80 yards and 3 interceptions in the second half. Yeah, he definitely didn't look himself in the second half. There's a couple lopsided throws as well. He didn't look good, man. I feel for Tua. I don't know what's going on there with Miami, but my goodness, it doesn't seem good at all, to say the least. We're going to break, and we're going to take a deeper look at the NFL Week 17 schedule. We'll be back in a couple. Save the hockey for the final block here. Tyler, let's bring up the Week 17 NFL schedule just one more time and kind of roll through maybe some edges here. I know it's a lot of points, but I do believe the Cowboys will win by, double-digit points. I know I do have a lot of question marks about their secondary, but Dak is rolling on offense. It's tough, man, on the road, short game, delay that kind of point, those points, but Malik Willis just doesn't have it, and this is a tough spot. I don't know, man. I just don't like the direction the Titans are going. Cardinals and Falcons going to complete stay away, but nice to really see Drake London. Drake London over the past couple of games has been fantastic, and Ritter is feeding him the rock, and I love that. On the Arizona side of things, a little bit better of a matchup for Hopkins. I said on this show, I actually said with Jake there, I would not start DeAndre Hopkins last week in that spot, and with the quarterback play, I'd be looking elsewhere if you got Cardinals in your lineup. At least James Conner's catching balls out of the backfield. Tyler Agil's really nice. It's another guy that maybe wanted some consolation brackets, but he was one of my favorite rookies. Him and Damian Pierce are my two favorite rookie running backs to target after Brees Hall. The Bears and the Lions, a big game, right? Fields against Detroit feel a little bit better inside a dome, a better matchup. We know all about Goff and his splits. Goff, Amon-Ra, maybe a DJ Chark touchdown. We'll see what happens with the running back situation. DeAndre Swift. Remember when somebody called him a league winner? Yeah. Broncos and Chiefs, 13.5-point favorites for Kansas City. Jerick McKenna did it again, had a receiving touchdown. You don't roll out anybody on the Denver side of things. Maybe Judy, potentially Sutton. Miami and New England, Indy and Giants, right? A lot on the line for at least three of these four teams. You hope for a better game from Ramondre Stevenson. The two Dolphins wide receivers continue to ball out, but we'll see what happens at the quarterback position here this week with Tua. And on the Pat side of things, I mean, Jacoby had a weird touchdown catch, but I wouldn't bank too much on Jacoby, but he is the one Pat that I would roll out there. Nothing on the Colts side of things, absolutely nothing. Maybe Zach Moss if you're super desperate. The two Alpha Eagles wide receivers, 1,000 yards each. Devontae is man, this guy is open all the time. Terrific game against the Cowboys. And if there's no Hurts, Gardner Minshew is a top 12 quarterback. For the Saints, I don't think Chris Olave is going to play. Maybe they shut him down. Alvin Kamara, and that's basically it. Panthers and Bucks. I like the Bucks here. 3 points. I'm going to take it. Tampa. The two running backs and White and Leonard Fournette continue to rack up a ton of catches. After that, like Evans just hasn't had a touchdown since week 4. He was invisible against Arizona. Godwin is the guy that catches all the balls in the slot, and his catch prop is always appealing and usually at plus money. And then it's the two backs. I mean, Fournette is 3.5 and roughly 20 receiving yards. He's been hitting consistently. Consider him. We'll talk about him more as we get deeper into the week. We'll see what happens with Washington at the quarterback position. A good matchup for Robinson Jr., though, against Cleveland's rush defense. Jacksonville, I think, you feel a little bit better about some of their weapons. It was a really tough spot, in New York, MetLife with all the weather there. It's just really tough. But I think, Zay Jones and Kirk, these guys are back and play. ETN had a pretty decent game, a lot of touches. Niners, you roll out your studs. Kittle, I think Ayuk back in play here against the Raiders secondary. Tough spot for Devontae Adams and Josh Jacobs, but it's hard to sit those guys, that's for sure. The Jets, we'll see what happens at the quarterback position, right? I mean, Zach Wilson, I think the writing's on the wall for Zach Wilson. I think he played his final game as a Jet. Seahawks, DK Metcalf. And then you have Ken Walker there. Vikings, all the studs. Packers, you can get involved, I think, with dubs this week, especially if there's no Watson, Lazard. It's the Vikings secondary. Rams and Chargers, a little tough to get, feel good about anybody outside of Cam Akers. And, Tyler Higbee had a monster game. I don't know if you can bank on that, but Baker seems to be locked into Tyler Higbee. Baltimore and Pittsburgh, and then Buffalo and Cincinnati. I think you're playing all the studs. I would roll the dice on Gabe Davis. He had a good game there, but he is very boom or bust. It was nice to see Pickens have a good one with Pickett, and nothing really on the Baltimore side of things. It's been a tough go, right? I mean, it's the two backs, Gus Edwards and Dobbins and Andrews, but there's nobody else. Somebody needs to step up. So go pay Lamar or don't, whatever you want to do, Baltimore. I'd say probably not. But also, what you have when he's not playing, and it's just a very mediocre offense. But go get this guy, wide receiver. My goodness. I think Bateman's a good wideout, but unfortunately hasn't been able to stay healthy. Mark Carr, I'm torn. Pick 2 in PPR. Ken Walker or Brian Robinson? I probably have a lean to Walker slightly, but I like Robinson in his spot. Oh, in London. I probably lean with the running backs. I probably rank them Walker, London, Robinson. But we'll do the projections and the rankings. We'll do all that stuff today, and Join the show later on in the week, Myron. We'll try to lock that answer down there for you. One more break, and we'll get into some NHL picks. I got some shot props. I got a couple goal scorers, some sides, and some same game parlays. Lots of hockey talk to round out Mean Streets. Keep it locked. Welcome back in. A ton of action on the ice tonight in the NHL. Make sure you check out ftnbets.com/free for all the picks in our FTN bet tracker. Also, Dango Bet, Selly Live, and our FTN Network YouTube page coming your way on Game Plus Network as well. I'm going to lead here with Thomas Hertl of the San Jose Sharks, taking the over 2.5 shots. A little plus money play for you, plus 128 over at FanDuel. The prop shop is your friend. Get the best possible odds. He is back in the lineup tonight after serving a 2-game suspension. He has cleared 2.5 shots in 3 straight games and 6 of his past 7. He's actually in a really good spot tonight against the Canucks. Since November 15th, the last 6 weeks of the season, the Vancouver Canucks are 7th in shot attempts and shots allowed at 5-5 per 60. They have allowed the 4th most high danger chances at 5-5 per 60 over that span. They have the 4th highest expected goals against over that span as well, and just goals against per 60 at 5-5. This team is number 2 in the NHL for the last 6 weeks, 3.56. They are not getting the goaltending. So I like Hertl over 2.5 shots. I also like him to score at plus 245. A couple other props that I like here on the way out. Roope Hintz over 2.5 shots. He's cleared in 3 straight and 9 of his past 11 since the last 6 weeks as well. Nashville inside the top 5 in shot attempts and shots overall allowed at 5-5 per 60. So a really good spot for Roope Hintz. William Nylander, 18 shots on goal in his last 3, 4+ shots in 9 of his last 10 hockey games. Cale Makar, not sure if you're seeing what he's doing. 30, 31, and 28 minutes over the last couple games, playing half the hockey games that he's playing. Oh my goodness, you kidding me? 4+ shots in 5 straight and 7 of 8. And also keep an eye on Mikko Rantanen, 41 shots in his last 5 games, had at least 8 shots in like 4 of his last 5 or 6. He's a little juiced, but I do like him tonight. Maybe put him into a parlay. Panarin plus money, 4+ shots in 4 straight. He's cleared 2.5 and 5 straight. And then Riley Smith, going back to him, he is cleared in 3 of his last 4. He's got 18 shots over that span. That's it. That's it. Check out ftnbets.com. I got some same game parlays here, just like Aho and Teravainen, Svechnikov and Natchez. Oh, yeah, goal scorers. Let's check it up quick time. We got to get out of here from Game Plus. Those are the goal scorers. Svechnikov, Nylander, Rantanen, Pasta, Hyman. Same game parlays on the Carolina guys. Aho and Tebow, Svech and Natchez. Calgary's top line, Edmonton's top line. Got a lot for you in our FTN bet tracker. Good luck on the ice. We'll be back tomorrow. Cheers.